We're live. Good evening. It's Wednesday night, live Tech Talk here today. And we've got the Nelsons. We got Calvin and Andrew. Yeah. Say hello, guys.
Hello.
Good evening.
Right. So we're going to nerd out today and talk about different things. And we're going to go through, some people sent some questions in, and we're going to have them answer it. So we're going to go right on through and just kind of greet everyone. Danny Boyd was the first one in here, Mexican spec. And then we got Blue Grit Garage, Mom M3, Mexican spec, One-Eyed Cat. Just keep on going down here. Same old here. And that's what we got here. We got about 13 people in here. So I'll tell you guys what I got going, and then we'll roll into them here. Right now, I'm still working on Plan Z's transmission. I've been having a hell of a time with this. I've been trying to make, a transmission that's never really been existed. It's a lockup, low ratio first and second with a valve body that's never existed. Cope built the very first one, and it's going to have trans brake, reverse manual valve body with low band apply, and it's going to have two, so that way I can do bump box in it, and kind of get a bump it in. And I'm trying to put aluminum drums on it in the front. Just a lot of trick stuff, and it's difficult to put it all into a package that never really had it, and it's a little different. So yeah, and getting parts for stuff that doesn't exist, you have to make a lot of it. So yeah, a little frustrating. So what do you guys got going on? You guys got any new videos coming up?
Yeah, we just started two projects. We just started a 95 Camaro with we're doing a 4200 swap into that, and a 8-speed transmission. Bullseye sponsoring us with a turbo, and we just got a really nice oil pan from a friend of ours over at Forever Fabrication. Really low profile oil pan. Lots of parts that are starting to come out for them. Going to do a nice homemade turbo manifold, and this will be the first one. We're doing a motor plate on. I'm starting to wonder if this might be the project that we do this guy right here on. This is a billet main girdle that I developed. That
Awesome.
This may be the project that we finally use this guy on, but basically just doing a max effort 4200 build with it, since we did so well at Six Summer with the Sunbird. This will kind of take everything to the next level.
Yeah.
And then we started my sort of dream build, 57 Chevy with a Northstar. And then we also have another project in the garage, which we haven't shown off quite yet. It's a 50 Studebaker, or a 48 Studebaker with a 50 Studebaker nose on the thing. It's a bullet nose. And that's Dad's project. So we're trying to get the 57 and the bullet nose ready for Six Smokies.
Oh, okay. I'm going to Six Smokies, hopefully in this car.
Okay, very cool.
Hopefully. And I do have some plans.
There's our sneak peek.
Look at that. There you go. Go full John Wilburn. Oh, there it is. That looks good.
Yep. So
it almost, it has that like that Willys feel to it,
Well, it's certainly something that was inspired by some of the more traditional.
Trying to get the camera to come back. It autofocus to the. It'll come back.
It's certainly inspired by those the Willys in the earlier builds. The Studebakers were pretty popular in the gasser classes because of how lightweight they are, and we've thrown this thing on the scale, and we were pleasantly surprised that the thing's very light. We'll pick up some weight when we put the big block in it, but it's going to be fun. We've Calvin's talked me into doing an 8 HP with that conversion, and trying to connect the new school with the old school, and the old man still loves his push rods, and he's more of the techno geeky kind of guy, so we complement each other well on that.
That's good. That's awesome. Yeah, I'm going to tell you guys a little secret. The Northstar engine is the reason why I stopped being a mechanic. And here's the reason why. It was where the starter location was on that car. It was underneath the intake manifold.
Yep.
That's the one, right? Yeah.
Yep.
So they would come in, and it was, I can't remember the flag time on it, but it was like a ridiculously low number on it. It was like 6 or 7 hours, right? But
Yep.
to take all those parts off, take everything off, put it on, put it back together.
Yep.
And oh man, it was warranty work. So it paid like 2/3 of flag. So I just like, you know what? I'm just not going to do this anymore.
Yep.
But other than that, the Northstar, when I was in California, I used to build a lot of dune buggies out there for people. And that's how I got into the rotary engines and the Subarus, because they literally bolt right in. And before everybody started putting all the LSs into buggies, there was a lot of people running the Northstars because it was the twin overhead cam. So you basically could get a wrecking yard engine that could be 8,500 RPM, literally right out of the box. And so they were perfect for the sand. If you had a transmission that was like basically a mid-engine, you set that sucker right in there, perfect weight balance, and then with 4 gears, it didn't matter because you had all that RPM.
Yep. I've heard that. I've heard a lot of people say that. Oh, I used to have one of them in my sand rail, blah, blah, blah. So
yeah. I was watching your latest video, and you were talking about how you can control the camshafts on all 4 of them, phasing them.
Yep.
We didn't have that back then. Literally, it was locking it out. And I don't remember what system we were running, but it was either like you either did it for low, mid, or top end. And a lot of people would do the mid range right there because it kind of was straddling both areas. But I think what you're going to do is awesome, because if you can get the low end and then start to retard the exhaust there, I mean, that's just going to bring that thing way up there. And then also to the intake, and you can just keep playing with that load separation angle, just start spreading that sucker apart.
Yep. Yeah, that's something that we've played a lot with on the 4200s, and I've just fallen in love with being able to change the camshaft on the fly. That I'm like, well, I want it on both cams now. I want to see how life is with a little more adjustability. So
yeah, it's gonna be awesome. Believe it or not, we haven't had a single tech question come in yet. So since I got you guys in here, Buick Smith actually goes.
Let's see if I can get this to come back. There we go.
There you go.
That was too bright.
It actually, when you put your camera up, your phone up to it, it was like that. It was washed out, and then it came back down, and then became dark. So
yeah, I'm trying to get it to white balance again.
Buick Smith actually asked some really good question. What would be a good transmission to choose for towing build with a 4200?
4L80.
Yeah, probably a 4L80E.
Yeah. I was going to say the same thing. That's a good transmission.
Yeah.
It's got a low.
And that's what Calvin has in his Fairmont wagon. And it's very easy to fall in love with the attributes that those have, between the ability to launch with the right gear ratio and not over gear the starting line ratio, to having the lockup capability of the torque converter and the overdrive. That's been a real rock star. It took a while for Calvin to sort out all of the challenges, and ultimately learned how to build transmissions because of that. And the frustration that we've felt over the course of time with having been dependent on others to provide transmissions for us, because we're so busy. Both of us work full time, and going through those valleys pushed him to the point where if you followed the Sunbird build, minutes before we loaded that car up in the trailer to head to the Midwest, to the Six Summer event, that transmission was apart. And that's a long road to go from relying on others to having a tranny apart minutes before you leave for a big event.
Right. Yeah. I know that feeling. I've loaded up a few times thinking, am I going to be able to race this weekend? And it's not nearly the tow that you guys just did, but I was still towing 6 hours going to Bakersfield from San Diego. So yeah, I know that feeling. I know that feeling. So I'm right there with you though, Calvin. And I had to learn how to rebuild transmissions out of necessity because I wanted to race, but I was not very. I was kind of poor, in California because how it's very expensive to live out there. So there's really no leftover funds for anything. So I had to learn how to build them out of necessity. That's the reason why I came up with the 904. Literally, you can rebuild it, at over a 55-gallon drum, and they will always seem to work. That's why I fell in love with that.
Yep. You don't even have to take the valve body off to pull it apart, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you take the valve body, basically just bolts on. The 904 and the 727 are the same valve body. If someone's saying that my volume's hard to hear, I will try a different setting here. I apologize. They don't have the Yeti on here anymore.
Yeah, I hope that's better.
That's a bit louder.
Okay, good. Can you guys hear me pretty good now?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. I once again, I apologize for that. StreamYard is, they're a little different now. So here's another one for the 4200. Does the 4200 have a standard Chevy bell housing pattern?
It does not, but the dowel pins are in the same location as a small block Chevy, and there's a couple companies that make adapter plates for them. The one company that I like the most is Atlas Industries, and I think it's like $150 for the adapter plate. It might be just over 200. It's very affordable.
That's awesome. So it's just a spacer then, right? So then you basically just offset your converter when it goes into, or is it just like a spacer for the flex plate?
Yeah. So yeah, you just run little spacers between the flex plate and the torque converter, and a piece of cake.
Is it more like, is it like a BOP transmission, or is it totally its own animal?
It's its own thing. It is unique to the Atlas series engines. The 4, 5, and 6 cylinder, they all share the same. It's the Atlas series bell housing pattern. But they were nice enough to put the dowel pins in the same spot, so that's the hard part. So.
Oh, okay. Oh, they're saying that my audio is better. Good. That's good. I'm sorry. Yeah, I apologize once again for that. It was just a setting. So, see, there's really nothing going back through here as far as questions going. So, look, kind of a slow night right now. So I apologize for that. I thought there'd be a lot more in here today, but anyways, it is what it is, right?
Yep.
Now let's get on the 4200 and your win. Let's talk a little bit about that, because that's a big deal. I mean, that's a hard thing to do, is to win a class. There's people who've been doing this for years and have never done that. Talk a little bit about that, and how did you guys think you were going to win on this, or the first time you went down on the first pass, you're like, wow, we might have a winner here, or were you just kind of like loading up going, I hope this goes, and here we go, and was it something like that?
Yeah, it was closer to that.
I figured.
I mean, but leading up to the event, there's a GTR that shows up every year, and he goes low 8s, high 7s, and I was like, well, we don't even have the cage shirt to be able to keep up with him.
Yeah.
So I was like, well, if he shows up, it's his to win. We're just there to win the party. And there's also the Baramont, which is a pretty consistent 860s, 870s car. And being we had zero testing on the car, I was like, I highly doubt we're going to be going 8s the first day. So I was like, if either of those guys show up, it's theirs to win. They earned it. Then the GTR broke in testing, and I'm like, okay, I mean, yeah, that increases the odds. And then the Baramont, he announced like a couple days before the event that he wasn't going to be able to make it because his car was still in the chassis shop. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh, okay, we might have something here. And then we tried to load the thing on the trailer, and I was like, I should test my bump button one more time, just because I was having issues with it. I thought I fixed it. Then I was like, you know what? Before we load it up, day before the event, or day before we left, I was like, oh, let's just test it one more time. And it was not working. It was, when I hit the bump button, it would release the trans brake, but it would never reapply it, and the car would just keep moving forward. And the 2-step would stay on, but it would just keep creeping forward. And so that was I forget if that was on the show or off the show, what we were talking about, having the transmission apart basically hours before we left.
Wow.
So pulled the Turbo 400 apart. They always send a really heavy duty spring for the reverse servo, and I was like, that's probably so they can release have the releases, like kind of like a hair trigger on a rifle, like just you barely let any pressure off of it and it lets it go.
Yeah.
And I was like, what if I put the stock spring back in it? And that's what I did. Tested it in the driveway. It worked. I'm like, well, fingers crossed it continues to work. And so we show up to the event. Very first pass was on registration day. Super lazy off the starting line. Went a 10:16 at 159 miles per hour.
Wow. I did see that. That's right. It was 100. I was like, wow, that's an 8-second car right there. If you're
it was like a 2.1 60 foot or something. Really. And once it came in, it was fun. But I was like, well, I mean, we got the horsepower, but we don't really have the launch so much. So I got a hold of the guys at Bullseye, and I was like, is there any recommendations you can give? And they gave a few recommendations, but to actually answer the question, it was kind of we showed up and it was like, I mean, we have the horsepower to do it, but we got to get it all sorted out and actually finish the week. So it was sort of a combination of we knew we had the car to beat, but we didn't have the testing. So it was kind of a little nerve-wracking. So
yeah,
the sense of optimism didn't show up until after day one.
Oh, okay. But yeah,
in the test, it was funny because a lot of things happened, and I'll share this story. Calvin comes back to the pits, and his eyes are about this big. He had just gone 159 miles an hour, and he's like, I can't feel the chute. So, Paula, who was riding with me in Crap Marrow, or the Camaro that we have with the Hellcat supercharger, affectionately called Crap Marrow, she ran up to Summit, and they were able to get they had a parachute in stock. So perfect. We threw that on, and I'm glad we did, because every day that car was 159. I think the last day it was 158, but that's when he had the better ETs. So the weather was so hot, everybody was down on power, and that's what we account that loss of 1 mile an hour to. But Bullseye's help was absolutely fantastic. They sent the part that they had worked out the details on with Calvin 2 days ahead of us, because we didn't want to risk having it one day in front of us for fear that it would arrive so late. And anybody who's run any of these drag and drive events knows that to finish first you must finish. Well, the reality is that the attrition rate, especially at this last event, was very significant. It was over 50 cars dropped out. And that is a testament in and of itself to how challenging these events are. So going into day one, we hadn't even talked about winning the class yet. And it wasn't until, I guess, the day of the second day that
it was during the drive on the second day that I was like, yeah, this is the one. It's going to happen.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's good. I actually have another 4200 question here. Is there any good 5 or 6-speed manual transmissions that came from the factory behind any of the Atlas series engines?
The AR5 came behind the 4 and 5 cylinders. Unfortunately, the flywheel on the 4 and 5 is different. So you have to get a custom flywheel, which is readily available. There's a company called MTech Motorsports that makes custom flywheels. You can order them right from them. It's not like it's a special order kind of thing. But yeah, the AR5s, they're okay. I hear I think it's third gear is the weak one on them.
Yep.
But you can adapt a T56 or anything that could bolt up to an LS. You can adapt. It's just
as far as factory transmissions, it's typical to most of the factory transmissions. The gear splits are so wide, it really hinders the performance.
Yep.
Ideally, with the smaller cubic inch engines, you want to have a much tighter gear split.
Yep.
And as Calvin identified in the video that he put out on the 8HP, that ratio split is really, really good for the small cubic inch engines.
Yeah, or a heavy car too. Yeah, that because we can get, like, when we're doing the testing on the Charger, that car weighs with me in it almost 4,700 pounds with gas in it. I mean, it's a heavy vehicle, and for literally an NA engine, we were doing all the converter testing. This thing was running in the 780s, and this is just a stock 6.4 with a stock as far as bottom end and heads. It just had the intake, so we lost torque because it didn't have the active valve runner, but it was just top end, and it had headers and a camshaft. Literally, other than that, it was a pull out, a drop out from an engine from a wrecking yard, and we just threw some cams in it, a cam in it, and intake, and so yeah, that's pretty good.
We had a question about that because we want to get back to land speed racing, and one of the questions that Calvin and I had that we wanted to throw out there is what kind of power can you drive through the overdrive gears on those? Because we need a lot of ratio or a lot of gears to accelerate the car to where we want to go, and we'd actually like to keep get the speed up with the overdrive if it's capable of holding the power.
It will. In fact, we've tested them up to I think it's 6 gears 1-to-1. Is it 6 gear? Yeah, 6 gears 1-to-1. We've tested up to 1,000 horsepower on that, and we've tested the overdrives to 800 horsepower. So that's wheel horsepower to the wheels. So I believe they're pretty good. The biggest issue on those is going to be the E-clutch drum. There's a lot of companies. I think it's RevMax is making one. Has extra oiling and some extra provisions, but that literally everything goes through the E-clutch drum, and they basically explode and they overheat and they burn up. If you've ever taken apart one of those transmissions, literally there's no bands. It's clutch to clutch, and it's literally a shell inside of a shell inside of a transmission. It's literally just stacking. They're really simple transmissions if you have the right tools for it. So,
that's good to hear. One of the things that we've talked about on that is Calvin recognized when he was going through the data on the Trailblazer build that he did, how much more efficient that transmission is, and that's part of what that is attracting us to doing that for the land speed effort.
Yeah, what fluid are you guys using? Are you using the Mopar one, or are you using that is it Motec, or there's another one? It's literally a third the cost of a pint.
I am using Valvoline high mileage automatic transmission fluid.
Yeah, it'll work. One thing I did know is that the fluid that's in it, the reason why they run that super thin fluid is only for when it's cold, because the factory fluid is it parabolics from 180 degrees to 210, 212 degrees. At 220, the fluid burns up. So there's not a big scale. There's not a big curve as far as viscosity when it's at different temperatures. It's literally the even. So it's one of those things that if you're going to run that, totally fine, because we tried it with ATF. But you burn them up when it's cold, but when it's hot, you'll be just fine with it, as long as you get up in temperature. And those things like to run hot, you know?
Yeah. The guy who helped me do the whole conversion, he was like, this is what I'm running. And I tried to keep as much as the original fluid in the transmission as possible. And then I just topped it off with the Valvoline, and, seems to do okay.
Yeah, 38 Racing's asking a question about this. We're going to shift back to the Trailblazer again. I'm looking at a Trailblazer for engine and transmission. I would like to convert the transmission to rear-wheel drive. Not a big thing, but factory PCM swap or to standalone easily. I guess it means easily accessible or easy to do.
If you want to keep all the original features of the chassis, all your factory gauges, and make everything happy, it's not really the easiest thing, just because you need something to emulate the factory CAN bus. There's actually a guy on the Facebook page who did exactly that on a 2002, but he hasn't branched into the other years of the chassis. He literally made a CAN conversion box that takes the CAN messages from your aftermarket ECU and translates it into the GM CAN and makes it, the chassis think that everything's okay. But yeah, I guess to answer the questions, I would go with like a 2008 or a 2009 and probably keep the factory ECM, because they came with a E67, which is the same as what came on an LS. Mm-hmm. And they're a little funny to tune. They're not as easy as the LS operating system, but if I was to give advice there, I mean, I didn't even listen to my own advice, so I put one of these guys, one of these Max ECUs, as sort of a piggyback on mine. But it kind of depends on what you're comfortable with as far as getting into a little bit of custom stuff. If I'm an electrical engineer, so it's kind of
it's natural, right?
It's just like, let's just rewire the entire thing. Like,
right.
No biggie.
We're actually going to shift gears here. KS Skyhawk is asking, regular 3-angle valve job versus Vizard's method for smoothing out transition up and under the intake. Anybody tried it? I've never. I don't even know what he's talking about with the Vizard's valve job. I don't know anything about it. So do you guys know what he's talking about?
Well, in some of the competition engines that I was involved with years ago, we actually got to a 5-angle, trying to get that approach angle to be more complementary, and where it picked up the most was on the low lift part of it. So you could actually get better cylinder fill performance with the multi-angle. And so David Vizard has been a big part of my world, being that he was putting out the books when I was first getting into racing 40 some years ago. And some of the research that he has done has stood the test of time. So I am not exactly sure what that's referring to, but the word choice there tells me that probably has a lot to do with that valve angle and that approach. And I would be very comfortable endorsing anything that David has identified.
Well, doesn't it kind of depend on your application as well? Like,
yes,
the turbo engine, you want a little more surface area for the valve to transfer heat into the head so it doesn't burn up your valves.
That's part of it, and that's why I was very purposeful in saying the competition engines that, back in the 80s, back before the turbo revolution really took off, being involved in some of the V6 Buick work was fascinating, because there was the development of those technologies and where folks were going. There was so much focus on that the folks involved in the program we were working with, prior to the stage 2 coming out, there was a lot of energy focused on the cylinder heads and the valve angles and having those small margins and those kind of things. So yeah, you're exactly right. The application plays a big part of this, and being able to get the heat out of the valve.
Sure, you could pick up a little bit of flow, but is it worth the extra heat in the valve?
And that's exactly, because you get those kind of NA valve jobs in a turbo engine. You may have something that at the extreme horsepower levels will not last 50 runs, versus something with more seat to it to get the heat out of it will last, hundreds of runs.
And there's also something to be said too, as far as like on an NA engine where it's literally creating a vacuum and the atmosphere is pushing itself in, compared to like actual boost where you're doubling the atmosphere or even tripling the atmosphere, because you're literally pushing it through the problem areas. You're not so dependent on things going through a choke point because there's force behind it. There's pressure more than atmospheric pressure. 1 ATM, you're at like 2 or 3.
Yep.
So yeah, no, I get that, because that's the reason why I changed heads. I went for, because I had like a 2 or 3 angle valve job on this one right here, and I knew, because I did it myself and I didn't want to put the time to do the extra third angle, and so that's the reason why I'm going to use it on this Plan Z with the suck through turbo, is for that reason right there, is because it's got more seat contact area on there to help it keep it closed and less leaks, so transfer heat. So I 100% agree with that. There was actually, we're going to shift back to the 4200 here. Ron Ward's asking, what's been the biggest challenge to overcome with the 4200 in regards to durability? It seems like you guys have got it ironed out pretty well. I'm just going to take a guess before you guys answer. Tell me if I'm wrong. It's just a well-built engine, and I'm not sure if it's under square or over square, but it's just a well-built engine with a decent oiling system. Am I correct?
Yeah, it's a decent engine. I mean, over square it has more stroke than it has bore, so whatever that is.
More stroke than bore. That's like a slant 6. That's called under square.
Okay, there you go. So, but yeah, I mean, they're pretty well built engines. We've not really. We've pushed stock ones to over 800 wheel horsepower, and we had a little bit of an oopsie and put 40 pounds of boost to one by accident. And that may have been what weakened the rod, which then killed it in the subsequent pulls. So they could actually hold more. The rods are definitely a weak point for if you want to go, we normally say like anything over 700 wheel horsepower, we're putting a set of forged rods in it, just because we've had some bad experiences with rods coming apart. The rods, that's one thing. The head gasket seems to be staying stuck down. I have coolant pressure sensors on everything, and they seem pretty flat, and we're not seeing any spikes or anything. We did see one engine. We've done probably 15 of these things, and we've seen one engine that had a crack in the sleeve right at the very top of the sleeve. Mm-hmm. Apparently that was a known recall of some sort through GM, a known issue, so you got to keep an eye out for that. Make sure that your sleeves aren't cracked. Other than that, I would like to see a little less stroke. If it was mine, they like to scuff the sleeves pretty good. They like to wear out the thrust side of the piston, but you kind of have to treat your pistons like a bit of a wear item, but that's with any performance engine.
For the guys wondering about 6-cylinders and their popularity, obviously the attributes of the engine is you have 6 one-cylinder engines.
Yes.
You have 2 mains per single cylinder,
mm-hmm.
which inherently is very tough. And when you consider the comparison to that of a V-shaped engine, 3 of the 4 pairs have a power stroke overlap where you're pushing one side,
yep.
and then you're immediately reverse thrust loading the bottom end of the engine and driving it in the opposite direction. So, your conventional small block Chevy, small block Mopar 18436, you go through the firing order, the 1 and 2 fires followed by 1. So you're pushing everything towards the left and then immediately reversing it and driving it towards the right. And you're trying to do that with 2 main caps versus a 6-cylinder. Everything is perfectly vertical. And you have 1 cylinder on 1, then 5, then 3, then 6, then 2, then 4. And that distribution of the load is absolutely tremendous. So,
Yeah. If you think about a V8, it has to contain the forces, between these two main caps here and here, it has to contain the forces of 2 rods and pistons. Whereas with an inline engine, it only has to contain the forces of 1 engine. So that's why you don't see like a 4-bolt main on an inline engine quite as often, just because it's not required. And, where also on a V8, your crankshaft's being pushed to side because the angle of
the 2 angles, opposing angles. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Also, too, because it's got those mains on it, you're going to have less crank deflection. So you're not going to have the basically what I call the jump rope effect of the crankshaft, where it starts to jump rope. It's very small, but I'm over exaggerating. But even if it's a couple thousandths, that's where it starts taking out bearings. And that's why a lot of the LS guys, the Gen 3 Hemi guys, or in small block Mopar and big block Mopar, thrust is in the middle. And so that's the worst place to technically have a thrust, because that is the worst point of everything whipping around. So yeah, no, and the one inherent flaw with the Slant 6 is that it only has 4.
Yeah.
It's only got four mains.
Yeah.
But you're never really going to RPM Slant 6 because of head flow. I was curious about something on the 4200. As far as head flow, what an average, so that way we can kind of talk about what they have for like head flow CFM at like say mid lift and max lift numbers, like say 300 and like 500 or something.
Yeah, we haven't actually flowed one. That's actually something that we're going to be doing very, very soon. So I've heard people say that like they flow 280-ish around 400 lift factory, and then ported they'll flow like 330, 340. Depending if you upsize the valves and that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of room for improvement, especially on the exhaust side, and that's kind of the weak spot of the cylinder head on the 4200. It has very small exhaust ports. Here, I'll grab one of them too.
While he's grabbing that, we typically stay with stock valve sizing because we rely on the turbo to drive the.
So there's your intake. There's your little tiny exhaust.
Wow. Okay, I see it.
Upsized a lot.
Yeah. But relying more on the boost to drive the air fuel past the valve as opposed to going with a bigger valve has been our approach to it. Both because of financial reasons, but also we feel very confident that that's been the right choice for us. Get that, keep those small valves, and then just run boost past it.
Exactly. And you can camshaft too for bad, ports on the exhaust. You could just add a little bit more on the exhaust. You just don't have to go as much lift, but just add more duration to it, and that helps out. If you can crutch it that way. Have you guys ever calculated like the piston speed, the average piston speed? I do know. I do know on the Slant 6, it's got a 4.125 stroke with a 3.4, bore, right? And I believe the rod's like 7 inches long, so it's got a good rod to stroke ratio. But it's literally, the piston speed is out of control once you get over 6,000 RPM. It literally is just, whoa, holy crap!
Yep. Yeah. So I made a plot. This like calculator that will actually show the real travel of the piston to get real piston speed, because average piston speed is just
top to bottom.
Top to bottom. So, but that doesn't account for, there's going to be a certain dwell time and, depending on rod length and all that kind of stuff. So I was bored one day. I made one of them. And it's surprisingly a big difference between like the average calculation. And that's one of the things that kind of sucks on the 4200. It's a 4.015 stroke, so 102 millimeters, and it's a 5.984 inch rod. So
wow! So that angle's like, that's like, what would the angle be on that? Like 20 degrees almost? Is it 20 degrees?
I don't know. I would have to do the math, but it's a 1.48 rod to stroke ratio. So but I mean, we've taken factory rods and pistons to over 8,000 RPM, and they seem okay with it. I mean, like I said, it wears the first side of the piston out, but you just replace them every once in a while.
One thing I've noticed too is that I like, in certain applications, I do like having a smaller rod to stroke ratio. They seem to build torque easier, and they're less prone to like detonation. They're less prone to a lot of different things because that piston's coming away so fast because of how fast it's accelerating away, than rather a longer rod where it's going to dwell up there longer and come away from the top to center slower. So I tend to like them in some racing applications because it will tend to be less prone to detonation, and they seem to make more torque, average torque, down like near the 4,000 numbers, but they lose it on top, but they seem to have it in the mid range. So, there's a place for everything on those. I would agree with that one. Yeah.
Yep.
Ron's asking another question. You've been watching the Northstar project too. What's the weight difference between the Northstar and the Atlas?
Man, guys keep asking questions that I don't have answers to. I don't know. I chose the Northstar just because it shares a lot of the features. Like it uses the same valve train geometry as a 4200. It's the same bore. It uses a lot of the same components. And it was like, okay, I can have my 4200, but now it's a V8 and it has variable valve timing on the exhaust and the intake.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of why I chose it. I didn't really have as much concern for the weight of the engine, but we should weigh one sometime.
But also too, with you setting it as far back as you did, it really doesn't matter at that point because you're helping your weight bias by a lot by putting it that far back. Yep. If I remember, just per the videos, because it's kind of at an angle, is our harmonic balancer behind the center line of the front wheels, or is it pretty close? It's behind it.
Yes.
Oh, see, that's
it's
ideal.
Like that much behind it, but yes,
it is behind it. That's all you need to have, right? Once you get to that point, you're good, right?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yep.
There was another question here. It was about bore. Buick Smith asked him brake. Putting 1987 spindles on my disc brakes from a 70 C20, not going with the booster. I can use the adjustable proportion valve, and can I get a lighter pedal from 1 inch down to 7/8 bore? Yes. Well, first with the adjustable proportion valve, I like the adjusting proportion valve if you're running disc front and drum brakes, because that way you can tailor it in. This is just my opinion. I'll let them go with it next. And I personally like the bigger bore on manual brakes. I know because it's harder to push. I get that, and I understand that. But with it being harder to push, it makes it. I'm less prone to locking up the brakes because I have to put in the effort. When I had a 7/8 bore on my other race car, on the Cookie Monster, I would lock up the front brakes a lot and put flat spots on my tire, even though I wasn't trying, because I couldn't feel the pedal with the 7/8 bore. So I think I'm at a 1.15 bore right now, which is, most people are like, what's that? Oh my God. But to me, it doesn't matter. And in fact, even on Plan Z, I'm going to a 1 inch bore on it. I went to a factory pedal. So that way, if I need to, I can put both feet onto it and modulate it. But that's just what I like. What's your guys' opinion on that?
We spend a very significant amount of time balancing the pressure to the force.
Yes.
What I mean by that is you can ultimately calculate where you have 150 pounds of force pressing against your pedal to generate 1,000 pounds of line pressure.
Yes.
And that is your magic balance. When you get that out of whack, too much pedal force with too little brake line pressure, or vice versa, you get a very uncomfortable, non-normal feeling braking system.
Yes.
So it's very important to get your pedal ratio right to your bore size, so that your bore size and force applied at the pedal give you 1,000 pounds of line pressure. That said, we've got a video out on that if you're interested, where we talk about that. But one of the things that you want to be careful on is there's a difference between combination valves and proportioning valves. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that you want to look at with that brake combination is making sure that you have a combination valve, because what will happen is it'll apply a certain amount of fluid to your brakes on the back. And if you have drums, you have to overcome the springs before they start applying the force to the shoes to the drum. And you want to get that combination valve right so that as you overcome that spring force on the drum brakes, then you're also applying it to the disc brakes in the front. So make sure you're very careful on your choice of valving. And most of the factory valving has a combination valve, and you're going to want to look for things that are mid-80s to get your best balance. So
yes,
design your pedal ratio to the line pressures that you want, and get the combination valve as opposed to the proportioning valve so that the application is timed correctly front to back.
Yeah, we actually did a whole calculation. We built a 2014 Mustang, and we did that calculation of, trying to get 150 pounds of force from your foot to turn into 1,000 psi at the in the lines on the braking system.
Yeah.
And, we found that we could change the pedal ratio to something that is more typical of a manual brake setup, something like a 7 or 8 or 9 to 1, and go to a larger bore diameter. Or we could keep the factory pedal ratio for power brakes, which was 4 to 1, and use a 7/8 bore, and it would have the same exact swept volume of fluid per foot travel and generate the 150 to 1,000 psi that we wanted. So.
Yeah, that's awesome. I did my calculations on, I think it was, is it Willwood or QA1? One of those, or maybe it's even Tilton, I'm not sure. But one of them actually has a calculator for that. Where you
PCM has a pretty good one.
Yeah, so it's basically the length of the arm where your foot's at, and then how far down is the hole, and then basically your stroke length, and then so that way you can calculate how much volume, since it's non-compressible. I mean, a fluid. It's basically a fluid. So yeah, just put pressure. Yeah, I like that. That's awesome. I actually never calculated it out. I would just, for my car, I only had 2 options as far as what I could put in there easily, and it was either 7/8 or like 1.15 or 1.05. I don't remember what it is, but I like the bigger bore for personal feel. So that's awesome.
Yep.
This one is actually Mom M3. Correct me if I'm wrong. 318s are externally balanced and slant 6s are internally. Well, I can tell you offhand that 318s started off as internally balanced, and slant 6s are, because it's internally balanced because it's a straight 6. It's an inline 6, so there's really no opposite forces going on. It's in line. So as long as you weigh your pistons, and that's another reason why I really like the slant 6 to hot rod them, because you basically, if your pistons are right, and then your big end, little end on your crank, your bob weight then is technically going to be correct as far as your reciprocating weight and your rotating weights. And as long as your crankshaft is balanced neutrally, you're going to have a really smooth running engine right off the bat. And then someone's going to correct me on this, but I think it's like 72, 73, or 74. I can't remember, but 318s went to externally balanced at some point because they were making cast crankshafts at that point.
Yep.
Going back to master cylinders, he goes, yes, the smaller diameter master cylinders definitely increase in pressure. As for the proportioning valve, unless you've changed the calipers or wheel cylinders from the factory, it isn't. What's your plan on that one? I'm sorry. What's your comment on that one? Sorry.
Yes, you're correct. Now, one of the challenges that you have is if you have things come off of the seat too far, you're going to need more volume. But as far as applying the force through the pedal to the bore size, you're just looking for line pressure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Michael Smith's asking, what's the piston speed you warn against at the slant 6? You know what? I have it written down in the cabinet right there. And for that reason, because I am 50, I just don't remember that. If I was 20 years old, I would be able to rattle that off, and I would tell you, say the 11, the the 20, all the way down to like the 75. But I don't have that in my brain anymore, so I have to write it down because I'm forgetting things now, like little things like that.
60's worse. 60 plus is worse than 60.
Oh man. I'm telling you, it's coming fast. When you have kids, man, the years just click by. I remember when they were born, and now the twins that you guys see at the track all the time, and now they're 10. They're 10 years old. So it's like, wow, where'd the time go?
Yeah.
He's in his 30s.
Buick Smith asking, are the combination valves on the manual master different from the boosted master?
Yes.
Well,
Yeah,
the pressure's the same, I would think.
Yeah, but the remember on the Camaro,
Getting a little bit of thunder and lightning.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys can hear that.
I've been hearing it. I was wondering, is that me or is that you? I can't tell.
No, that's us.
we've got a heck of a storm rolling through. There is a difference in them, and I can't remember, but I think it was 10-pound difference between when the shuttle valve would move and start to apply the front brakes. So that's something you would have to do the research on. I wouldn't want to give any advice without doing the research because, everybody has a different feel for what they want. We actually go heavy on the rear brakes because our tires are bigger. So you got that inertia that you've got to account for. And so again, I'm going to generalize the comments, but not be specific on the comments because that's something that you've got to tailor to your comfort and your application.
Exactly. That's why when you guys hear me say a lot of these questions, answer these questions, I always say, in my opinion, what's happened to me for that reason, because not everybody likes the same things. And that's the reason why I run the adjustable valve on the rear end, on the rear brakes, is because I do the same thing. I like a little bit more on the back for that exact reason. I have more traction back there. I got a bigger tire. And when you have big and littles, and then that car is diving down, I want to be able to keep the rear end from basically skidding. But at the same time, if you put too much on the front at one time, the car dives. If you put some on the rear end first, the car squats down instead of doing this number. And I always feel better when the car's coming down braking rather than, kind of doing that like nose down effect.
Yep.
Since we don't really have any questions here, I'm going to kind of ask you guys a question. Calvin, 57 Chevy. It was funny. My kid loves 55, 50s. He loves the Tri-5s, but I think a 56 is his favorite one. So why the Northstar in the 57?
So I kind of got into it a little earlier.
Yes. But this is the why. This is the reason why. Yeah.
Yeah. So I developed that billet intake for the thing, and I was going to put a 4200 in the thing. But I don't know. I just wanted to do something a little out of the ordinary, a little more on the wild side.
Yeah.
We were starting to put the Northstar in something else. It wasn't fitting great, and we happened to, be looking at my 57 the one day, and I was like, what if we put the Northstar in here? And then we, naturally started cutting things and tried it, and it was like, it actually fits pretty good in here. And one thing led to another, and that's kind of how we ended up with that. I'm more of an inline six guy. I will freely admit that. I like the way, all the discussion we had earlier about the inherent advantages of a inline six. I'm just a fan, but a high revving V8 is that ticks a lot of boxes as well. So, I thought you were going to ask why the 57. This is actually the Matchbox car that my dad used to. Anytime he went to Texas, he would buy me Matchbox cars, and this is one of the ones that survived. So, this is why I
got
like
it.
57s.
And it's funny, that was actually going to be part 2 to the question, was why. So you answered it for me, but it's funny because I'm really into darts because of the Matchbox cars, and it's funny how it goes from Matchbox cars to real cars to where 99 cents becomes $99,000. You know what I mean? It's like, where did that happen?
Oh, I was very fortunate to be able to have a bunch of the Tri-5s. Specifically, I had a 56 for a long, long time, and the boys used to sit in the back of that when we would go to car shows, and they were well aware of the fact that the 57 was what I always wanted, but the 56 is what I could afford, and then had 55s, and now today we have two 57s, so they're not in the best of shape. There's going to be a lot of repair work necessary to bring them to life, but he was properly brainwashed, one car at a time.
It's so awesome. My boy goes with me to the parts store. I get free delivery to my house as far as from O'Reilly's. I'm considered a shop. I've got an account there, but it's always nice to go in, and because the boy goes in there and he goes through their cars, and they know, they're like, we got a new car here, and I'm like, sweet. So he buys them, and sometimes we will buy two of them, so that way he can open one and keep one on the wall. So when it gets destroyed, it's destroyed, but then he always has a fresh one to look at.
Yeah. I might have one of the ones here that I destroyed. It's like the hoods, because it has a tilt front end on the thing, and I used to I'd be playing with the thing and it would fall off, and so I have one that doesn't have a front end.
Yeah. I'm not sure if we talked about this, but could you, now me and you have talked about this in depth about the early versions of the 4200 and the later versions of the 4200 privately. So if someone's looking to get a 4200, could you kind of give them some of the pros and cons of which one to get and which one would be better for handling more power with less work? Or
So in general, the only part that you want from the early ones is the crankshaft, because it's a fully counterweighted crankshaft versus the later ones came with an 8 counterweight crankshaft, versus the 12. And then pretty much anything from we call them Gen 1 is from 2002 to 2005, and then Gen 2 is from 2006 to 2009. So pretty much everything else from the Gen 2 engines is preferred. They had bigger intake cams, larger valves. The rods had a little oiler on them that helps to keep the pistons from scuffing up too bad. They had larger exhaust ports in the cylinder head, and they're just better in almost every way. That and the retainers from the early engines. The early engines had a non-beehive, I guess, a square valve spring. I don't know what you would call that. Unfortunately, nobody makes anything for the beehive springs that came in the later engines, as much as I would love to keep the beehive spring. So those would be the only two components that I would use from an early engine.
Okay, so it's kind of like me with the Mopar. So it'd be better to buy like a forged crank and then put it in your 400 later on, for if you're going to do that, for that same exact reason, because the crank's better, but everything else on the later ones are a little better. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, that's awesome. And now I'm fascinated because obviously my channel Slant Daily Garage, because I love 6-cylinders. In fact, I was telling you guys earlier before we went on the air that my dad was really into Toyotas, right? Funny enough, I'm adopted, but he the very first car that I ever drove over 100 miles an hour was my parents' Supra. He had a 86 and then the 87, which was, I think the 87 or 88 was a twin turbo or turbo version. But I remember, like any boy, you're going to sneak your dad's hot rod car, when you're 16 years old. And I see them looking, because we've all done it. And, that was back before cell phones or GPS or anything like that. But there was 4 of us in the car total, and we were doing, 130 miles an hour. And we wanted to see what that car would do. Obviously, it was safe. It was on a closed course in Mexico.
Right.
And, so I just love the 6-cylinders because of how smooth they run.
Yep. Yeah, I've always loved the sound. It's just, I love that smooth, V8 has a lot of harmonics because you got two banks and they make their own sort of chords. If you think of a musical instrument, whereas an inline six is a nice smooth frequency that increases with engine RPM.
Yeah, yeah. And on those, it still has it still fires like front three, back three, front three, back three, front three, back three.
Yeah, it's the same firing order as all the other
Everything.
inlines. 1, 5, 3, 6, 2, 4.
Okay, so same thing. Yeah,
Yep.
That's awesome. Do those with headers? Do you do like a 3 to 2 to 1, or do you guys do is it 6 to 1? On those would be the best.
We've done both.
Yeah. On the turbo stuff we're actually getting ready to do an NA engine. And, we're going to get the cylinder head flow numbers there so that it can come up with the right package on the camshaft. And it's going to be a 3
to
to 1. And then the 2 to 1, we're going to talk about what that looks like. Because one of the biggest challenges that we have to recognize, because you've got such a long engine, everybody spends a lot of time talking about equal length headers and all that. And on a 6-cylinder, it's easier to come up with that combination. With the V8, you have the challenges of the sequential cylinders firing, which get all wadded up in the collector. But what they don't spend enough time doing is sizing the length of the secondary piping.
Exactly. Yes.
And on a 6-cylinder, because you have the two bank, or the front and the back coming down, getting the secondary pipe to the right length and packaging it becomes one of your bigger challenges. And it was fun to watch Calvin. He's experimented on a number of things over the years, and he became acutely aware of the significance of the length of the secondary piping on a package that he put together, and had a less than stellar.
I was being lazy, and I want to keep my muffler in the same spot that it was.
Oh.
Or relocate it further back so that I could keep the two sides even. And so one side was real long, one side was real short, and it sounded real bad.
Oh yeah, because they're probably hitting each other, right, or coming really close to each other.
It was all wadded up at certain RPMs, and
it sounded like a 4-cylinder.
as a father, I was, you don't want to do that. And he gave me that, I'm going to be stubborn and do what I want and go the short distance here. And to watch him have to undo it and redo it was particularly satisfying.
That was a I told you so, not saying it verbally.
I didn't even have to say it. He just looked at me.
That's awesome. Yeah.
And it's, we going back through as much effort as we did trying to optimize naturally aspirated engines, you become very aware that the secondary piping has such a impactful attribute to the performance of that. So to answer that question, it depends on how we're able to package it and which car we put it in, as to whether we go 3 to 2 to 1 or we just go 2 3 to 1s and work it out that way. The package will dictate.
Yeah, it's funny we're talking about 4200 here. Someone asked me another question, and it's off topic, but you guys seem to run a lot of turbos and superchargers. What's your guys' take on nitrous?
I like it, and you better have the budget for it.
Yes, that's correct, because it bites you in the back end, not on the front end.
The extreme reaction that you get is very addictive, and once you get addicted to that hard hit that you get, it's very easy to push it a little bit further, and you better have the budget to run nitrous. That's all I gotta say. Because when you start pushing 500 plus horsepower nitrous through an engine, you want to have the budget for it, because you will be shocked how fast you go through wrist pins and pistons and things of that nature. And back when nitrous was first coming out, I had one of the very earliest systems that was commercially available. And it didn't take long to figure out that I wanted to stay at the lower horsepower levels because, we were all trying to figure out how to make it work back then.
Yeah.
But it was very easy to get a little greedy and pay the price for that recklessness.
Yeah. The one thing I've always noticed with nitrous is that even though you're not destroying an engine, I will take an engine apart that I've been running on, and I'll be losing spring tension. So because of how hot the rings are getting that quickly and how the cylinder pressure goes instantly, literally, it's a push of a button, you're at peak torque, and it just continuously falls down because obviously your engine RPM is going up. You're only putting X amount of extra oxygen into it. But one thing I did know is I would take them apart and I would be like checking things, and I'd pull literally the rings, and you pull them out, and then there's no spring left in them. You can literally put them in the bore and they can slide down on themselves because there's nothing left. The tension's gone on it. And I agree with you as far as the budget, because you figure a system nowadays, let's just say a decent one's like $1,500, right? And that comes with everything, purge, whatever you're going to need. But the amount of plugs that you're going to have to buy, you're going to spend $500 in plugs a year minimum, because you're going to be putting them in, tuning it. You can even go through $500 in plugs in a couple months while you're tuning it. And then nitrous is not as great as it used to be. So I remember paying $2 a pound for it. Now it's up to $8 a pound, for nitrous. If you can find it in my area, there's only one company within a 75-mile radius here that actually has nitrous to buy, and they're $8 a pound. So
I tell everybody this: it's the cheapest thing to get into and the most expensive thing to stay in.
Yes,
And
I agree.
You have got to be prepared for that, because it's easy to get addicted to how far you can carry the front wheels in the air when you're running nitrous, but you will pay on the backside.
Yeah, right. Yeah, no, I agree with that. And now in your video about the 57 Chevy, did you kind of give an idea of what kind of times you were looking to get with that, or did you maybe I just missed it? I apologize, but you're trying to make it an 850 car, then I'm going to assume?
I'd like it to go 890s.
890s.
So it's might as well shoot for a nice round number.
Nice relative number.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, it can't go 90s. It's got to go 890s.
Yeah. Have you ever driven a car on the street that has a like a funny car cage on it? Have you ever done that?
Yeah. Yep.
That's not my favorite. I personally like an 850 cage. To me, that's as much cage as I want to go on what considered a street car.
Nope.
I don't like the in a drag car where you're literally just driving it and that's it. Totally fine. This is just my opinion, but I like that when drag racing. But when I'm driving on the street, I like to just have a regular cage. Well, I would say it.
Yeah, I 100% agree. But I don't know, the guys at Drag Week that are going super fast with the funny car cages. You can't deny how cool that is. So it's not something I would want to drive on the street often, but for like a drag and drive, I don't know, that you don't get much cooler than that.
Right.
My Camaro, the 2010 Camaro,
yeah,
I didn't even notice it.
Yeah.
That car is that big.
Yeah. Well, they're hard enough to see out of as it is. You probably don't notice any difference.
Yeah, it's a very large car, very comfortable. The seat is pushed back. If you were to put that same kind of cage into a smaller car, just the ingress and egress is going to be so miserable. That in and of itself is going to drive you away from wanting to get in a car with a funny car cage.
Yeah. There's actually, you guys don't have to answer this because I tend not to, but they want to know where you guys are located at. Like, you can kind of give an area. Don't be specific. Don't give city, but just kind of give an area. That's what I would recommend.
Yeah. We get that question a lot. I normally just say Pennsylvania. Yeah.
Okay. Perfect. Wow. Yeah. So that's right. You guys then, to get down to that last race, would you have like a 14-hour drive?
You mean to get to Six Summer?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's right around there. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. It's 900 miles.
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah. We do a lot of towing. Our trailer that got stolen last year, we track our mileage because we do our maintenance work based on mileage, and that had 126,000 miles on it, and it had been in 26 states.
Wow.
We've had that thing, as far as Texas and out west, and we've been to Drag Week multiple times there, Kansas, Oklahoma. It had made 14 trips to Florida. It had been to Maine two times, I forget, multiple times. And to drag a trailer through 26 states is a big challenge, and we are not in the optimum location. We often, I don't want to say envy, but appreciate the folks who are located in the Tennessee, Kentucky area, and the opportunity to get to so many events with a whole lot less effort than what we have to put in. It's not only do we have the distance, but we've got to get past Baltimore and Ohio, Washington and Richmond, and
we got a good group of local tracks. But it's just there's not a lot of big events. Like there's not like a TX2K or like a FL2K. It would be nice if there was a PA2K.
Yeah.
There's many like of the more like YouTuber friendly type events up our way, so that makes it a little challenging.
Yeah, if everyone knows I'm kind of near the Memphis area, if I could repick somewhere in Tennessee, I would like to be in the middle Tennessee area, just because it's got a little bit. I come from an area where I literally lived on the side of a mountain, in California, and where I'm located at, my vision ends where the tree line starts. There's nothing beyond my area. So when I first moved here, it took me about a year before I stopped feeling claustrophobic on a regular basis because of that. You just don't have that distance. You just have a surrounding, there's nothing beyond. And I was losing my direction. Like I would lose north, south, east, or west, which normally was inherent for me just by visual cues. They're gone. So it's like, man, where am I? And what am I doing? Like you lose that track. I'm actually going to shift gears here. We talked enough about the 4200, which I think is an amazing platform. I like the fact that it's called the American Barra now, is Ameribarra is what they call it.
Yep.
Yeah. So yeah, I like that. I'm going to switch over to the ZF8HP transmissions because I see that you guys run a lot of them. I work on them as far as in the aftermarket. I made a high stall converter for the ZF8HP 70. It's basically for an NA type of engine that you're going to be running at the track for like 650 to 700 horsepower, which is kind of like your every hot rodder. It was designed with the 1980s in mind. Remember, everybody back then had a 25 to 3000 stall in their hot rod, and they were all driving around. We can still have that nowadays, but we have the advantage of lots of gears, plus we can also command lockup, so that way you get the K value, the torque multiplication out of the hole. But then when that starts to spinning or losing that, where you're under efficient, then you can just lock it up, and now you're at 100% efficiency because you're directing all the power through it. So what made you guys pick the ZF8HP over other transmissions?
I had seen a lot of people were starting to use them, and it made me curious. We've had mixed success with the Turbo 400. Normally we run Turbo 400 stuff, and we've had kind of mixed success with them just because it's like it'll either last forever and you can't break the thing, or it's slipping.
It's one and done.
You're making a pass and it's slipping on the top end.
Yeah.
And so I've been looking for another transmission platform that was a little more modern that we could maybe start to transition into. And I saw a lot of support from, this is one of my favorite ECU manufacturers, Max ECU, I noticed that they were starting to really get into the 8HP 70s and 90s very heavily. They make their own flash to write onto the factory controller, and it eliminates all the factory programming. And it takes it from, it's like 400 shift maps down to 4, and just simplifies everything. And I was like, well, let's give it a shot. And so when we did my Trailblazer, that's the transmission I chose, because I wanted the overdrive and the lockup, and I wanted something very streetable, and so why not stick it in a 4,600 pound car with 750 horsepower?
So are you guys running a higher than stock stall in that thing?
Yes. So I found a Circle D 4,000 stall converter on Facebook Marketplace. I think the guy wanted $400 for the thing. And Dad happened to have a job site out near where it was located, and he went and got the thing for me. So, that's what we're running. Yep.
Well, I'm particularly interested in hearing details on the one you've developed, because our drag and drive combo that we want to use is going to be between 650 and 700 horsepower. And so love to hear more details on that.
Sure. Yeah. So have you guys, obviously you've seen how big the 70 is, right? As far as the diameter and the weight of it. So this is a significantly smaller one. I have notes at work, so I don't have to remember it, but it is, I believe it's like a 9 or 9 inch in diameter. And now the only thing that we I want to say changed on it, whatnot, because whenever you have a smaller converter, obviously you're going to have less centripetal force as far as coming back through, and that's basically what gives you, and it's a lighter unit. Now we did change the clutches. Now we cut on the stator on the turbine side. I can't give away everything, but we did cut on the turbine side to give it a higher stall. But we were worried that by cutting that, obviously you're gonna have a bigger distance, and you were gonna lose some efficiency. So you're gonna be like, normally an efficient converter is gonna be like, say, under 7%, when it's going down the track. Even though we cut it, because that converter is so well made from the factory, when you cut them open, and this is the reason why we picked this one also, is when you cut them open, they've already been furnace brazed right from the factory. Some of them have been tack welded and then furnace brazed. So, and it's not like, remember the torque converters of yesterday, like the Chevy Vegas or the Cavaliers, where like they're the 245 converters. Those things were literally bottom of the barrel, welded in, and nothing was right on those things. What makes these converters so awesome is how well they're put together, and how when you do a change and you change it up, it's still super efficient because of that. So there's less things to put inside of there. And as far as like, what were you looking at? What were you wanting to know about as far as what I changed in the converter, or are you looking for what am I? Yes, exactly. So you see how the diameter of that is almost relative to the plate that's in the back. It's pretty close to it.
Yep.
The one that I did, see where the clutches go on the underside?
Yep. On the bottom here.
Yes, exactly. So that's where the clutch pack goes on these things.
Yep.
So there's 3 circuits that go into that converter. Normally you're going to have 2. You're going to have a clutch fill, and then you're going to have a lockup, right? On this one, you have a converter fill, you have a converter exit, and you also have a clutch command. But they're all 3 have to be working. They actually work in reverse. Normally you're going to have a clutch apply, and it's going to go this direction towards the engine. This one actually applies the opposite direction. So the clutches, that's why they're on that flex side.
Man, think about what that does for your thrust bearing too.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think that's why they did that, is because it's thrusting the other way. And that's why they put basically 2 flex plates on it. So you're going to have the one flex plate that's built into it, and then also the flex plate that's on that. So because of that, and it's literally always in lockup on those things, I think factory, they commanded in second gear. Yeah. And then we tell people to change it to third, halfway through third. So you get the K value first, second, and third, where you get the multiplication, like the 1.2 value on it. But then halfway through third is right when that stator starts to start moving. And once it starts moving, that's actually when it dips below that. And that's when we command lockup on it. And they work really good that direction. And the 70, I believe, has got 2 clutches in it from factory, and it's got 3 sides of the clutch that are actually being used at any given time. And they're good for factory, I would say about 1,000 horsepower to 900 horsepower. The problem with those becomes the input shaft, and the pump on those. On the 90, you notice that I believe there's 14 bolts that hold the pump in.
Yep.
On the 90, they're all the same diameter. On the 90, the top are the exact same diameter as the 70, but the bottom 7 are much bigger for that reason. And the shaft input is much larger, because remember, you're going to have a shaft that's X long now, and it's going to have 3 individual holes drilled down the center of the shaft. Yep. So that's where they tend to like to break, is right there on that spline. I believe it's when it goes into the E clutch, I think is where it is. And I think I was showing you guys this earlier off camera, that is literally the weak link in all these, is that E clutch, because that's the one that provides on the input, and then does it go on the output? I can't remember, but it goes on it's the very beginning or end of one of the two. And the E clutch is the most important one, because it seems to go through everything right there. So that's, and go ahead.
I was just saying, neat. That's
yeah.
A lot of really good information.
Yeah.
And I'm going to say this: it did my heart good to hear somebody say the K value.
Oh, right.
I haven't heard somebody use that reference in a number of years. So thank you.
No problem. Well, this is what I do, because that's the inherent thing that you get with a torque converter. My biggest pet peeve is when someone tells me I've got 700 horsepower and I need a converter for it. And it's like, the literal name of it is torque converter.
Yes.
You're converting work, which is torque, into movement. And the beauty of it is that you're going to spin it up with fluid. It goes around the turbine. It gets shot back onto the stator. And because of that, it's hitting a right angle. That's where you create more work than is actually going there, because you're pumping it. It's coming around and shooting. And that's actually where you get the multiplication. That's why they're technically faster off the line. Because if you're making, let's just say 1,000 foot-pounds of torque, and you've got a K value of 1.2, now you've just made 200 more foot-pounds of torque as far as what the output of the transmission is going to see. Yep. Very short time, but that's what you're going to get.
Yep. And your tires got to be able to hold that torque too.
Yes. And that's why, I've always liked the Power Glide for that reason, for a couple factors, is because changing that gear ratio to the 1.8 first, and that's what I have in the Cookie Monster, is that you can use, because you're putting, for me with Nitrous, because you make so much instant torque, you can make so much more power right off the line. And with all that instant torque, and it holds that engine at a lower RPM for longer, because obviously, me being a Nitrous person, Nitrous makes X here, and it's slowly going down over time. Doesn't even matter anything, because it's only how much oxygen is going into the engine, and as the RPM goes out, you only have X amount of extra oxygen, so it's definitely going to go down. But that way, you can hold it at that one peak torque, and then use that power all the way down.
Yep.
So.
Wheelies become the norm with Nitrous.
Yeah. So on the there's a couple things I got to choose my words carefully here, because I do work in the field that we always like to release new parts at a certain time, but I can tell you that there's a new part that's coming out that I'm going to give you guys to test. Okay. And it's for the 8-speed. It basically fixes one of the inherent problems, not detrimental problem, but a problem with operation of one. So there's no more hints beyond that, but I'll make sure that you guys get at least one, maybe two. And I want you guys a full review on that. So that they didn't know I was going to do that. I did that to surprise them. So, but yeah, you guys will dig it. And anything else you guys had any questions on the 8-speed as far as what you guys found and on it?
I mean, I was going to give my general review of it. I've
Sure.
kind of fallen in love with it. We're now going to put, as we mentioned, we're putting it into Dad's gasser, and I'm putting one into my Camaro. And you know, I've on the Trailblazer, we didn't really change a whole lot with our typical combo that we normally run with the 4200, but we're noticing that it's much more efficient than the other combos. Like it's making, you know, the amount of mile per hour that we're seeing at the traps is happening at a much lower boost level, and I attribute a lot of that to the transmission and how efficient they are. You know, between the lockup clutches, and they also have a lot less clutch drag, apparently, in the transmission, which helps it to not consume as much of the horsepower that we work so hard to make out of the engine. So,
Have you guys taken one apart yet?
I haven't, and I'm looking forward to doing it at some point, but we haven't yet.
It's literally snap rings, but here's the thing: because the shells are aluminum, there's a company, I don't remember it offhand, but they do make a custom tool to get those snap rings out without breaking them, because the snap rings do go into these very large diameter aluminum shells that are already cut with holes cut from the factory. So I'm just giving you a heads up. So they've already, even though it's aluminum, they still cut holes in them to make them as light as possible. Yep. And on your video, you guys did a weight comparison on one. They look physically big, but they're relatively light for what they are.
Yes. Yeah. They're, I think it was only like 10 pounds heavier than a Turbo 400, and they were like 10 pounds less than a 4L80. So it was like,
when you take one apart, you'll understand why, because everything inside of there literally is aluminum for that reason, because you know, when you take apart a 4L80, there's half of it's cast iron or some sort of cast to begin with. Same with the 400, and the 400's got, I mean, those are big drums, and those things are massive, you know. And so, and everything on the ZF8HP, once it gets, I forget the diameter of the shell, but it's a large diameter shell, and it's very long. It's maybe about a foot long on the biggest one, where there's a shell that goes inside of a shell is how they're stacked. But the one that's the biggest one, there's lots of big holes cut into that for that reason right there. So that way you get less forces that are farther away from the center line to build up like inertia. And that's the reason why they shift so fast, is because of that reason. There's a lot less spinning mass far away from the center line on those.
Well, you know, that is fantastic for those who haven't built small cubic inch engines or high revving stuff. That mass of those larger parts is a big risk of having parts come apart. And Turbo 400, for the RPM we have to hit on the 4200, we're replacing those drums and multiple components with aluminum pieces. And with the 3-speed, the Turbo 400, you still have so much gear split. Even though we run the looser converters, it hurts us. So the 8-speed transmission, you're able to get a much closer ratio split that works very good. And I think you figured it was almost 50 more horsepower gets to the tire by going through the 8 HP as opposed to a Turbo 400. And when you run a small cubic inch package, and you need to keep the RPMs up so the gear splits work in favor, and you're getting something more efficient, we are very excited about what the future holds for the next package.
And even if it's something that doesn't rev high, like, you're still getting more horsepower to the back tire. And we're excited because Dad's gasser is going to have a big block Chevy in it, and it should have a lot more power area under the curve, but it's going to be really interesting to see how it performs versus a Turbo 400 on something like that as well.
Yeah, they work. They're going to actually surprise you on how well they work. In fact, For the gasser one, what I'm going to try to do too, and this is another thing I was kind of didn't tell you guys about. I'm going to see if the company will give you guys a converter and a flex plate, which is going to be one of our high stalls. Now, these are only for NA use only. It's going to work fine in your application with the big block because you have a light vehicle. So it's going to work great. My recommendations on these is to lock them up in 3.5, like I said earlier, and that's where we found out the best efficiency for my converter. Now, this was in a charger with X amount of power. We built 3 engines. Well, actually, I built 3 different engines, 6.4s with this camshaft and this headers. We ran one on the dyno, we ran one on the Spintron, we put one in the charger. And this was basically going to be your hot rod engine. So, but it made 600 and I think it was 40 something horsepower, let's 49, 45 arbitrarily. But we put the engine in, that engine that was on the dyno, we put it in the charger and we made 598. We were so close to the 600 mark, but I think it was 598 point something horsepower. So if you look at how much little loss there was in that, that tells you how efficient the transmission was on that. So I can tell you from firsthand experience, when you're at that power level and you're only losing that little bit of power, that almost makes me want to try put one in a slant 6 if I could, because of how efficient they are, and they're not very terribly heavy, comparatively.
Yep.
So now with your controller that you have, I've been messing with a company, and I forget their name offhand, but they have a system, but they kind of got screwed over by ZF because they are hacking into their computer, and they tried to sue this company. So this company now requires you to take the computer out, the board out, change the chip, and then this way it controls it. But because of this, it's the one that has the clutch on it, so it's a clutch style. Have you seen that?
Yep. Yeah,
Turbo.
you're talking about
Lander.
yeah.
I think it starts with an L.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll think of it. Keep going.
So the reason why I'm personally going to probably try that route is because I like to have the clutch, and has 15 different types of settings in it as far as how you want to run it. Do you want to run it with a clutch, so where you actually shift it? Do you want to have a clutch start and then basically sequential up or down? Do you want to put it in drive and just make it a transmission? So that
Yep.
For me, that's what I was liking. But I'm curious to hear about how yours. So that basically that's just giving the computer the transmission input. So you're basically tricking it into doing what you want it to do. Is that how that system works?
So it reflashes the factory controller, and
okay.
Yeah. Now that you say there's some sort of lawsuit, maybe they got some trouble coming their way.
Yeah, there was actually a big thing on it, because the first version came out almost 4 years ago, and this company I'm thinking of, and there was a reason why they didn't produce anymore.
Yep.
Because they had to figure out another way to do it.
Yeah, because I know the MaxCC guys reverse engineered the the bootloader for the the transmission controller itself, and they take you have to get this special programmer and hook it into the into the the little plug on the transmission and program the thing, and yeah. But maybe because they're a Swedish-based company, maybe they skate by, maybe something like that. I don't know. That's I might want to get a few of them flashed before I lose the ability to, huh?
Yeah, just look into it, because once that other company, I can't remember the name of it, but they're really popular for a while, and they're really popular with the drifters, because these transmissions you can get at the wrecking yards now for like $300 or $400, literally a takeout one.
Yep. Yeah, we picked one up for $450 the other day.
Yeah, exactly, and that's out of something that makes let's just say 80,000. It's got 80,000 to 100,000 miles on it. The one that we got, we took apart, and it had 85,000 miles on. Obviously, no fluid changes or anything, because it's kind of a sealed transmission ish, and it's got 100,000 mile fluid in it. We took it apart and we measured the clutches, and they were exactly still 90 thousandths thick, the same thickness that they were. straight from the factory. So it's a transmission you can literally pull out. It's a plug and play unit. That's what makes me so excited about it, and how much power it can handle. Now, the 1,000 horsepower is in respect to the weight of the vehicle, obviously. So when I say that they're good for 1,000 horsepower, I'm saying that in reference to a Charger that's been stripped down, that's about 4,200 to 4,300 pounds down the track. So if you're putting it relatively in a car that's about 1,000 pounds less, that power capability exponentially goes up, because you're having to move less weight. So there's less torque going through the transmission to get it moving. And that's where the things break, is usually in second or third gear, when that torque multiplication is still way high.
Well, I was very impressed with my 4,600 pound SUV and 750 horsepower. The thing goes 10.7, 128 miles per hour. I was very impressed at a bone stock 8HP70 is that's what's in that thing, and it seems to be lasting so far. Knock on wood.
Right. Knock on wood. Yeah, right. So what I'll do is I will find that company that for the clips, but I would recommend taking it apart, and it's going to trip you out. If memory serves me correct, the pump runs from, there's a chain inside there that runs the pump.
I've watched a few videos on it, and I it's a change-driven pump. Yep.
Yeah, and the one that we took apart the first time, it didn't have a tensioner on it, and it literally was like a slack chain on it. Not crazy slack, but it was just like, me being an engine builder also, I'm just like, whoa, like you look at that slack and you're wondering if it's going to pop off or not.
Yep. Yeah.
Did you guys have any? Go ahead.
I'm excited to take one apart. I hear it's easier to like pull the case off of everything and leave the whole stack, and then put the case back over top of it when you're done.
I've taken them out that way. I've never put them back together that way. Okay. So, but I definitely have taken them apart that way, because literally it's just a stack deal. Right. I like stacking them with the transmission straight up and down. I have this. If you see, this is on a stand here. I have that, so that way I can rotate it so it can stand straight up. For that reason, because the 8-speed, you literally just stack. It's just a bunch of stacked parts, and the way you take it apart, you just lay all the different parts out, and you just work in reverse order and put it all right back in. That's cool. And I was like, I'm going to take like every 904 I take apart when I get it. But that transmission, I've taken them apart, a few of them, but then they all look the same. If the fluid doesn't smell burnt at all, literally it's going to be just fine.
Yep.
Yeah.
Cool.
What else do you guys have on the 8-speed? Yeah.
What's do you have any experience with 70 versus 90? Like, what's the?
That's exactly what I was going to ask.
I hear that the 90 is a bit longer. Is it literally just have more clutches? Like, what's the?
I think it comes down. It is a bit longer, and it's a bit different in one other area. I think it's just behind the bell housing. It's slightly larger, and I believe what that's from is because it's got more clutches in it in the area. It's got a different input shaft completely, and I believe the converter is larger also. I know it is. It's got 4 or 5 clutches inside the converter, and it's significantly heavier. When you pick up a 70 and then you pick up a 90, it's one of those things that's like going like 6.0 to 550. There's a different, you're like, whoa, okay, this is a different transmission. It's much beefier inside. I was working on a few converters for those and making like a billet stator for those, to put inside the converter. And the difference in converter, like that converter you have in front of you right there, the 90, see how that works? Yes. See how that on the pump side, okay, the 90 curves up higher and then comes out farther. So it's actually bigger in diameter, and that clutch stack area is bigger also. So I believe the bell housing might be slightly longer, and that's probably where you're getting most of it, is because the converter, you look at it and you can tell that that's a 90.
On the power capability that you can run through them.
Mm-hmm.
The red Camaro that Calvin's going to put together, it's a drag and drive effort.
Yep.
And we're anticipating in the 1,200 horsepower range for wheel horsepower.
Yep.
Will a 70 do that, or should we go straight to the 90 and not even risk it?
I would go straight to the 90 at that point, because you're going to be going probably through the clutches. The transmission will handle it. It's going to be basically you're going to go through the clutches on that converter in lockup, because you're going to be commanding lockup in third. Then when you go to fourth, you're going to be putting a lot more force on that input shaft, because it's going to be pulling it down, and that's where you're going to start having problems. Is it's going to start smoking those clutches. I actually have a list. I'll send you guys of what I would do on a 90. RevMax, I believe, sells most of the parts for that. But I think just changing the also the E-clutch on the 90 is also an inherent issue on that also. But just changing that, Dave Starnes from DMB Transmission, he's the one that built the first transmission. He's the one that taught me about the ZF transmissions. He had a full weight Hellcat, and he was running 840s. He set a record with stock bottom end. I put nitrous on it, and he was running a stock supercharger on it, but he had a 90 in his. And I believe when we dynoed it, he was putting 12 to the ground. But remember, or maybe it's 13. But it's such a heavy vehicle, it's 4,200 pound vehicle. So he didn't have any transmission problems at all. With that, his problem is that the rear cage that houses the independent rear suspension literally pushes forward. It will stretch, and the front tires, you'll know, because you measure the gap between that, and then you come back and it's half an inch shorter, like literally rounds. It changes.
Yeah, we watched a guy blow the rear end out of his the one time we were at the track. They look a little fragile.
Yeah, it's because they put these polyurethane and rubber bushings in there. So you gotta put aluminum bushings in those to control that, and then also to where it wants to walk it, because obviously in the independent. So they want to, if this is going forward, they want to pull themselves in like this, and it starts to crab walk after a while, and that's also too what forces the whole cage forward. Also tends to go forward, but at that power level, you could make a 70 survive for what you're doing.
What if you went to an upgraded torque converter, and because I know like Circle D's coming out with a 4-clutch lockup style converter, could you go, because the 70s
so much cheaper.
A lot cheaper.
Oh my word, yes.
By a whole zero cheaper.
Huh?
It's it's like one is on this side of the comma, the other one's on that side of the comma, right? Yeah, no, it's a magnitude. I would say here's my personal take on it. This is just my personal opinion. You could make a 70 survive what you're going to do. For how long, I don't know, but I know that a 90 will thrive at that power. It'd be interesting for everybody who wants to run a 70, if you're looking for content, to build a 70. Can you make a 70 survive X with X with X? And then go straight to the 90 and say, this is what a 90 can handle, and then you never have to touch it again.
One of the challenges we have is we're so far away from home, and when you leave your truck and trailer in impound, you're pretty far away from your tools too.
Yes.
So we tend to err towards the side of being more conservative.
Yes.
But we're going to try and do some testing locally to do some of those things of what can we get away with when the trailer's in the same parking area, and we're less than 200 miles from home.
Yeah.
So part of making a successful program is doing a lot of testing, and anybody who's followed what we've been doing realizes how much energy we put into testing what we put together. And the transmissions, and this has been a painful process to get to where we're at now, and we're hoping that the the 70 definitely eases the pain with the cost and its abilities, but the 90, you can't help but to be drawn towards that with the potential risks that you have trying to make 1,000 horsepower 1,000 miles from home.
Yes. I tell people, think of the 70 as kind of like a turbo 350, and then think of the 90 as a 400. That's a comparative. That's a reasonable comparative between the two. And that's literally, obviously the 350 is not 1,000 horsepower capable, but that's literally the difference between the 70 and the 90. So the 70, 1,000, I would say realistically in a car that is light enough, say under 3,500 pounds, I would personally be safe saying 2,000 horsepower for a car that weighs under that. That's its capability literally from the factory. You're going to obviously have some issues. I would definitely change the E clutch drum at that point. But on the 70, I do have a list of parts that I'll send to you guys. What it takes to make that work at that power for how long I couldn't tell you. But it is a lighter vehicle, so it's going to last longer. But you're at the limit of what that transmission can handle with what you're asking at that 1,200 horsepower level. I'm just being honest because if now, what engine is this going into?
It'll be a 4,200.
It'll be a what?
4,200. So.
4,200. Okay. So what's the average torque on something like that at, like, say 4,000 RPM, 5,000?
It would be pretty low.
Yeah, we never run them there.
Yeah,
we are way above that. Just to make them move, you've got to get them up in RPM. Okay.
Well, then that case, because the horsepower, then the torque's not really there at that point. Then it's more of the horsepower on the backside. Yep. I would say that it's going to survive better at that. If it's more of the lower RPMs where that grunt is happening and that moment of inertia, I'm doing all the hand waving here. I still, every time I talk about that, my engineering class is your cross product,
F cross R, right hand rule.
Right hand rule, hand waving, right.
Even gang signs.
Right. That's an engineering gang sign, right? Those are fighting words. Right. I actually do have a tech question here. It's for vintage adventure drives. Tech question. Could a high stall converter cause enough heat to cause an engine to overheat when only using a cooler in the radiator? I would like you guys see what you guys thoughts on this one.
We've, like my station wagon, I have the ability to obviously lock and unlock the converter with the 4L80E, and I do notice a significant drop in transmission fluid temp when I lock the torque converter up. It'll get pretty, 210, 220 if I'm having to drive around with the converter unlocked. And when I lock it up, it'll drop down to 170 pretty quick.
Yeah. To answer the question specifically, I would say no. And here's why. To generate enough heat to impact the whole system, the duration that you're applying that much energy is long. So the engine's going to overheat. Because the engine's going to overheat, it's not going to overheat because of the added heat load that you're taking from the transmission and putting in the system.
Yeah, I agree with you, because here's what I tell people when they ask me a similar question is that if you're generating so much heat in your transmission to overheat, if it's running through, let's say on the cooler side, that fluid's going to burn up long before that you're going to overheat the engine from the excessive heat going into the radiator, basically when it's getting sucked back in, because the fluid can only really handle 250 degrees, and then it's really smoked after that. Most of them, some will handle it a little longer, but yeah, I 100% agree with you on that. And
when you consider the mass, to heat, the heat transfer and the mass that you have to heat is a balance, and the mass that you have in the engine, say it's a super small radiator, so you only have 2.5 to 3 gallons. The amount of BTUs that can absorb is absolutely enormous. Correct. So if you have a normal vehicle and radiator combination, say it's 4 gallons, you're even that much higher in sheer mass that you would have to put the BTUs into to have it overheat. So I'll go back to my previous claim. The engine's going to overheat because the engine's going to overheat the system before the transmission will add additional heat load to the system.
I'm going to give you guys another little insight onto the ZF8HP too. Have you guys studied into the fluid flow on that? How it works? Have you, like, as far as coming out of the transmission?
I've briefly looked into like some of the fluid paths and how it has to get fluid to the clutch packs, and it looks pretty convoluted. So. It's
super convoluted, but because of that, how the fluid comes out of the transmission is that before lockup, it goes through the converter, comes straight out of the converter to the cooler and goes up to get cooled. When it's in lockup, it doesn't come straight out of the cooler. Literally, the cooler becomes a secondary thing, because it's so efficient at that point. And I think that's the reason why they want to keep the temperatures up. So it goes through the converter, then goes, when in lockup, then it goes back into, does all it needs to do, lubrication. Then it goes through the cooler and gets cooled at the very end. And when it's going through the converter, that's the reason why it's got those 3 circuits, is that way you can get a converter fill, and then you're basically having a bypass out where it goes into the cooler, comes right back out, then it fills the transmission and starts lubricating the parts on that too. So what I tend to do on those is I like to run on the ZF8HP. I like to run 2 coolers that are in parallel, because you're slowing down the fluid then at that point, and then becomes the delta across the cooler then becomes much higher. So you're changing, because you're slowing the fluid down through the cooling, but then as it comes back, it speeds back up and then goes back into there. So you're not slowing down the fluid. You're only slowing down because it's in parallel. So the same amount of fluid is moving across it, just at a slower rate. Can you believe, guys, we've only got 9 minutes left? This 2 hours flew by.
Yeah. Time flies when you're having fun, right?
Right. So is there anything else, any closing things you want to get out there, or any questions to ask, or anything like that?
I see Dallas in the chat. I just wanted to say hi.
Hey, Dallas.
I saw him too. I wanted to say hi to Dallas too. And I talk to that dude pretty much every day, every morning, 7 o'clock sharp,
Yep. He's a good dude.
Yeah, very good dude. As far as now, there was one question that I'm going to ask, and I kind of alluded to it earlier, but is there anything future projects you kind of want to talk to people about? Now, be vague, please be vague, but this way it kind of wets people's whistle on what's coming up.
Yeah, well, this might be a bit of a giveaway, but we got a Nissan engine coming soon, so.
Nice.
Yep.
An NA 4200 build.
Yep.
Those who know us, we've done some land speed racing. We're going to get back to that hopefully next year.
Mm-hmm.
Part of the challenge with both of us working full time and then trying to make a YouTube channel work is you have to plan so far in advance, and it's very challenging to have all the pieces come together and be able to produce content on a regular basis. So, those are some of our long-term goals. And, I'm most excited about the gasser build because that just scratches a personal itch.
Right.
But the land speed, for those who have ever done that, they understand that sense of community that is very unique to that entire adventure. And when I say adventure, as soon as you experience it, you will realize that is an awesome culture, an awesome experience. And I'll share this little story. I got to Maxton was my first time that I ever went land speed racing. And I went out to the finish line, the final stripes of that 1 mile. And I looked back at the starting line, and you can literally see the curvature of the earth if you know what you're looking for, because, it's measurable how much vertical distance there is per 100 feet. Anybody who builds buildings knows this. Well, when you get to a land speed event and you look at that, the first thing that popped in my head was, oh my God, what did I get into?
I'm going literally over the curve. It's so far away where I'm starting.
You can literally see the curve of the earth, and it's like, wow.
Yeah.
But we are super excited. I'm super excited. He's putting up with me being a 10-year-old at times. About it looks like next year will be that opportunity to get back to it. So look for stuff on that. The 4200. We've got an LS that is almost done. Took a 4860 over to make it 302 cubic inches, and it's going into a Camaro. So it's got a lot of neat things that tie together there. And it's the drag and drive culture has that bond.
Yes.
Of the challenge, the hot rodding, the true hot rodding spirit is there. And I would encourage all of the folks that have ever thought about going to those kind of venues to get involved, because it's an awesome culture. We love drag racing. That is our roots. But these other venues are very, very fun. So, okay. Yep.
Want to see something cool?
Yes.
Look at the dome on that guy.
Whoa. I like that.
Yeah, that's going to go in the NA engine, though. NA 4200, and that's trying to pick the right transmission for that is what drove some of those earlier questions. How much power can we drive through the overdrive? Because then your gear selection becomes a lot easier. When you look at the aftermarket gearing that's available, you can get a 286 gear that's got enough case hardening to survive the amount of heat that you generate for those long runs.
Yeah.
But beyond that, to look at a factory gear, it's easy to go through a factory gear. And I'll use this example. When I used to run Nitrous back in the early days, a factory Ford case hardening was only good. You could get about 9 to 12 runs out of a set of factory gears running heavy loads of nitrous in a big block Chevy. Versus an aftermarket gear, you could get 30 to 50 runs out of them before you would start looking at the wear as being a concern. And when we look at the land speed stuff, you can get a 250, you can get a 275, but if you want something with real case hardening to it, you're starting to look at 286s and that kind of thing. And there are some NASCAR gears out there that I got to find a source for if we want to consider that. But after experiencing the positive attributes of the ZF, running an overdrive is starting to make more sense.
Yes, I agree. Now, were you guys going to? You guys going to race right here in Arkansas? Is that where you guys going to go?
I definitely want to get there. There is, if they can get enough people to go to Maxton, they're actually talking about opening it up next year.
Okay.
But the closest track for us is up in Maine. We're 1,000 miles from there. Versus Arkansas, we would have to pull. It's almost 13. I think it's 1,300 miles. So Maine makes a whole lot more sense. Plus, we can run 1.5 miles.
Mm-hmm.
And our ultimate goal in the relative near future is to get to Bonneville. So we want to get a lot of longer runs in and take advantage of that. At Maxton, you only can run 1 mile.
Yeah,
I say only. Once you experience it, that is an addiction waiting to be born.
I'm telling you, I know. I've been out there. I've seen it. I've only driven a Corvette in one, as an El Mirage right there in California.
Oh,
It was on a dry lake bed.
Yep.
But it was still, it's like, I agree with everything you're saying, the community, the fun value. And that's the reason why there's that other car on the lift over there, my 68 Dart, because my
Yep.
goal is to do 200 miles an hour if I can in the 68 Dart, factory-ish style, without lengthening things, chopping things, doing this and that. If I can try to do it, even though I'm going to have to change rake and keep the air from going underneath the car, that's a goal of mine, to see if I can do that.
Cool.
Very cool.
So, but we're going to be winding down here, guys. So I wanted to, everyone, thanks for showing up. I want to thank Calvin and Andrew for coming out and filling the spot. Dallas is going to be back next week, and but go and check out. You guys got a new video coming out soon, or?
Yeah, I haven't quite figured out what I'm doing for this week, but it'll be 57. It might be on the gasser, might be on the red car. I haven't quite figured out what I'm doing for this week, but
Yeah, right.
We'll figure it out.
All right. Well, anyways, guys, we're going to take off here, and we'll see you guys next week. I want to give another round of applause. Thank you guys for showing up and hanging out with us for an evening here on Wednesday night. So anyways, you guys take it easy. Have a good week. And don't forget to go see Mr. John Wilburn on his channel. And then on Friday, 7 o'clock Central Time. And then go see, I'm not sure if Buff and Kim are going to go on after this, or if they're going to be, I think they do. They normally go right on after us. So anyways, you guys have a good week, and we'll see you guys later. And I believe